Hello friends, I am Dr. Abhishek Chaudhary, and in continuation with our discussion on Materia Medica, I would like to discuss about carcinosin. But already so much has been said by many great homeopaths of our country and around the world. They have said so much about this wonderful nosode. So what someone like me with such less experience can tell you about this remedy? But whatever I know, whatever little experience I have, and the few cases that I have seen, what my understanding is regarding carcinosin, I would like to share that with you. So, to start off, how do we understand carcinosin? My idea is that to understand carcinosin better, we should go back to our knowledge of pathology of second year of BHMS. We should look back at what we used to study about cellular adaptations. We used to study about hyperplasia, metaplasia, atrophy, hypertrophy, dysplasia. Sometimes the cell number increases, sometimes the size of the cell increases, sometimes the polarity or the pleomorphic changes appear. Sometimes one kind of uh, mesenchymal or epithelial cells change its form into another kind of epithelial or mesenchymal cells called as metaplasia. So all these changes, adaptations that we used to see are due to prolonged irritation. Any kind of irritation or stress for prolonged period of time on the cells produces these kind of adaptations. And if that stress continued further, if that irritation is not removed, then it may change to carcinoma in situ, a cancer cell that is still it is confined to the epithelium, but later on may change to an invasive form if the irritation still persists. So this theme of prolonged irritation is seen in carcinosin. A prolonged exposure to stress, prolonged can be a relative term in a sense that this prolonged time can be different for different personalities. For someone it could be 10 years, for someone it could be 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever. We see that from our knowledge of pathology that majority of cancer, I am not talking about any particular cancer, I am talking about in general, that majority of cancers develop later in the life, after 50 years. But in modern society, in today's society, what we are seeing is that many cancers, they develop very early in the life as well. So the stress is right in today's time is right from the beginning of the life, right from the childhood. So that's why I said that this prolonged time can be a relative term. And we used to study in our study of neoplasia about many factors, many risk factors for cancers, racial factor and genetic factor, and one of those factor is environmental factors. And environmental factors, if you can recall, they mostly are irritants. They produce a prolonged irritation. For example, someone who chew tobacco or betel nut, continuously irritating it, and the cells change it's formed to a pre-malignant condition, leukoplakia. And still, if the irritation persists, it may change to oral cancer. Similarly, in case of smoking, continuous smoking causes a kind of cough, smoker's cough. Then it may lead to chronic bronchitis, and later on it may change to uh, bronchogenic carcinoma. Similarly, in case of alcohol, a person who takes a lot of alcohol, in the beginning the liver damage starts, then may lead to cirrhosis, and may ultimately lead to hepatocellular carcinoma. In case of prolonged exposure to radiation, ultraviolet rays produces different kind of skin cancer. So this prolonged exposure to these irritants used to produce, that we believe, cancerous changes, and that is the same thing we can observe in a carcinosin patient. And this prolonged exposure to stress or irritation is beautifully explained by Dr. Saptarishi Banerjee. You should check out his lecture on carcinosin. He had beautifully explained. He had given examples about how a girl who had been continuously molested since the childhood, or maybe harassed over the phone by someone, now when she becomes an adult, late after prolonged exposure for 10 years, 15 years, now she gets anticipation. Any doorbell rings, the phone rings, that anticipation develops, that fear comes out whenever their doorbell rings or the phone rings. So you can see a very a rubric, very interesting, that anticipation relatives about. So any relative, might be an uncle who was molesting her for a very long time, so now she anticipates about that relative. Constant exposure to this kind of stress, constant parental domination, constant pressure is put on the child to perform. She knows that it is too much burden on her and she might not be able to excel, but she wanted to. She want to prove. Very hard-working person. You can see the rubric industrious. Very hard-working person, likes to prove to their parents. And a love for the family as well. Even after that much abuse and pressure and burden, she loves their parents, their family members, and even anxious about them. You can see the rubric, anxious about his family. Even after coming to the adulthood, if any member of the family gets sick, she comes to you and they tell that, please doctor, this kind of sickness is going on around, and can you give any kind of preventive to my whole family members? Because she cares about the family members. But there is prolonged exposure to that. And you can remember in prolonged exposure some other remedies like natrum and Staphylos aureus as well. But natrum has a history of grief, and in Staphylos aureus, if you compare, Staphylos aureus doesn't have that kind of anticipation. She has more of an indignation, a suppressed anger, ready to burst out at any moment. But in carcinosin, there is prolonged exposure to this kind of stress. We are seeing nowadays, and throughout the history we have seen that many actors, artists have suffered from cancer. So you can see a rubric artistic aptitude. So carcinosin has that artistic aptitude, likes to draw, maybe do an acting, drama, dance, to sing, to perform, and very sensitive about any kind of art. Like you can see the rubric sensitive about the drawing or literature. Likes to admire the nature, the beauty of the nature, any forest, seaside, mountains, flowers. Like to admire, like to enjoy nature. So many actors, if we would have been able to look at life of many actors, we might find a history of such prolonged exposure to stress, any kind of history of difficult or burdened childhood. And if you see in common scenario, if you think that majority of actors, comedians even, because comedians have to put on a face to hide their emotions, to make people laugh, to put on a smile on people's faces. You can compare it with natrum. Natrum is more a common constitution for actors and comedians or artists. But carcinosin can be as well, an artist or an actor can belong to a carcinosin constitution. And in today's scenario, in today's modern world, I believe that apart from natrum, carcinosin is becoming very common constitution nowadays. So likes to hide, even he comes to your clinic, I've seen that likes to put on a smile just to hide what the pain, the feeling inside. You can see a very interesting rubric, laughing, feeling at his own, laughs at his own feelings. So definitely you can compare it with natrum. And natrum and carcinosin are very closely running remedies. Many kind of fear, claustrophobia is there, ailments from grief is there. Both gets aggravated from consolation as well. But you have to remember the history of both the remedies. And inside could be a lot of turmoil. You can see another rubric, a mildness, violence masking thee. Whatever violent feeling inside, the mildness, very mild person, carcinosin. When it comes to your clinic, your office, you will find that very mild in nature. But behind that mildness, behind that smile, there could be a lot of pain, turmoil, a lot of violent feelings, just like natrum. And various kind of fear, fear of various kind of diseases, so hypochondriac, fear of various illnesses, fear of cancer as well, prepared from the cancer tissue, and it has fear of cancer. Just like nitric acid, you can compare it with nitric acid, soranum as well. And regarding the artistic nature, desire, likes dancing, music, you all know that. And very interesting, I have seen a very interesting fear, and that was fear of worms. One patient told me that she has a fear of earthworms. And you can see the rubric: fear of worms, and interestingly natramur is also there. Just 4 remedies, and natramur and carcinosin, very prominent remedies. So apart from this anxiety, you know, various kind of sleep disorders, insomnia, very common medicine for insomnia, very important medicine for insomnia. And chronic kind of insomnia, or any acute kind of insomnia, any kind of insomnia which might not have any cause. And very interesting, one patient came to me, and she had a history of insomnia in her family, so her mother had that insomnia, her mother family, means her mother's sister had insomnia as well. So that insomnia, the sleeplessness used to run in her family. So she told me that. You can see the rubric regarding the sleeplessness hereditary. So you can try carcinosin when there is a family history of insomnia. And sleep position is very interesting. You will find in case of children as well that they like to sleep on face and on knee chest position, like Bedoran. On the face and on the knee chest position. It's very interesting. And this anxiety we had talked about, you can see a very interesting rubric, that biting the fingertips. You can see the rubric, biting the tips of the finger. It could be due to anxiety, and many kind of obsessive compulsive disorders. It's a very prominent remedy in the rubric fastidious. When we think about the fastidious rubric, we always tend to think about arsenic, but carcinosin is even more fastidious than arsenic. And in today's time, due to vaccination, various kind of family history, or you can say the lifestyle is like that many kind of autoimmune disorders, genetic disorders like thalassemia, autism, Down syndrome are seen in children. Very severe disorders that we are seeing. And carcinosin is a very prominent remedy, very much indicated in cases like that. You can see all the rubrics. Any history of very strong history of cancer, or any kind of any other disease, severe disease like TB, or maybe a disease like diabetes in the family. Very strong history of all these disorders. And because he had expectation on his shoulder, a prolonged torture, and prolonged you can say pressure, finally he takes all that, and finally the constitution breaks down. And then comes an attitude in which he is very sensitive to what people say to her or to him. So you can see the rubric, admonition aggravates. Any kind of dant fatkar can aggravate this patient, become very sensitive, take everything in bad part. Even somebody likes to say for the benefit of him, he still takes that in the bad part, because now he is fed up. The constitution has broken down. So you can see even depressions very important remedy for suicidal tendencies, especially in case of cancer patients. You can see the rubric. In cases of cancer patients, finally they realize that everything, has to end. They feel very depressed, sad, and the thoughts of suicide are coming in the mind. So, in a gist, if we want to know about carcinosin, apart from our what the rubrics we have seen and all, if we take the collective thought, we can say that it is a remedy that is very indicated in today's time, you can say a very 21st century remedy, a very useful remedy for the clinic. And as the time will progress, I believe this is a remedy that will become more and more useful in the clinic. At last, I will like to answer a doubt that is in the mind of many students and many young homeopaths. At least I have faced that problem, is that from where to study carcinosin. Carcinosin is not given in great detail, or if given, it is given in very short form in majority of materia medicas, older materia medicas. So I will recommend 3 sources. First, you should definitely read the Pfoubister's proving, because Pfoubister had proved the carcinosin. So he had written extensively about carcinosin and in a great detail. So you should read proving of Pfoubister. Second, I will advise that you should read from the Soul of Remedies by Dr. Rajan Sankaran. Again, a very, you will say, we are really privileged to have a homeopath like Dr. Rajan sir with us to teach us his experience, his knowledge. So you should definitely read from his book, from the Soul of Remedies, carcinosin. He had described beautifully, and if you cannot find that book, I am providing a link of Hpathy from where you can read an extract of carcinosin from his book. So you should check out the link in the description of this video. And third source I will say is you should read from Dr. Robin Murphy's Materia Medica, the Lotus Materia Medica. He had given in great detail about carcinosin from head to foot, from the aspects of mind, etc. You should definitely go through it. And what I have told, I have tried to make a connection with repertory and with my little knowledge. I have barely scratched the surface, I believe, of this wonderful nosode. You should definitely look at all the sources that I have mentioned and the videos of Dr. Saptarishi to get a better understanding about carcinosin. So I hope you have liked this discussion on carcinosin, and if you like the video, please press the like button, share this video. If you have any suggestions, post in the comment section, and till next time, goodbye.